Should. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Dr. Love. We're back in the studio. Old school this time. It's just me and Coach Crush talking
Back
like
to
we
the
used to
saddle.
talk.
Mono, man to man. We were talking about what this episode was gonna look like before we started it. We're like, you know what? Let's do a little throwback, a little just off the cuff, something on our mind. Um, I feel like in the past we've discussed just like, okay, have we talked about everything that there has been to talk about in kind of this long format? And the more that we've dived and broken that down, I think the answer is a resounding no. I think there's a
No.
lot more topics out there.
Yep.
And with that said, do you want to introduce what the topic is going to be today?
Yeah, I'd love to. No, and it feels good to be coming back to this because some of our best stuff has kind of been like stream of consciousness, sort of like as things are happening in real time. Just kind of taking a step back and being like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's talk about actual real life stuff we're going through. So I feel like this is kind of relevant. So introducing the topic we're going to be talking a little bit about today. It's pretty much how do you know when it's worth the wait? Like we
Mm.
talk so much in this show. If you've been a long time Dr. Love listener, or if you've just listened to a couple episodes, cherry picked a couple off our Spotify, you might have heard us talk about, things like, hey, how do you know if you're ready for a relationship? Or how do you know if someone is like ghosted, like a ghosting you episode, or
Yeah.
don't be a simp. Like that was I had fun doing
Oh,
that one.
the simp
But
one was legendary.
the bathwater comment, I think
Oh
I
my
still remember
gosh.
that one. But like no, I this is one where it's like I don't know if we've ever really talked about, we talk about the initial stage of like, oh, how to go for it or like how to interact with someone as you're getting to know them. But what happens when you get to a point where maybe you do know somebody and hey, like I think this is someone I'm really interested in, but I don't know when or if or how, and I'm just kind of sitting here, twiddling my thumbs, asking myself questions.
hmm Yeah, I think one thing that we kind of talked about, because like there's something that we discussed in a previous episode from years ago was like when to know it's time to let go.
Mm,
Like we've only really talked about this idea of like, oh, cut your losses, move on. If they're not for you, then make that decision, move on. But I think this situation that we're going to be talking a little bit more about today is, well, what happens if you've really established that rapport and connection, but you know, you spent like there is a chemistry, there is something that's real, but someone may be less kind of emotionally available, or maybe just the timeline's different from one person to the other, or just kind of managing that kind of expectation. I think that's a kind of a good summary if that
no,
if
I
you
think so. I think I'd agree for sure. And, you know, it's interesting thinking back to what we've said before because, I remember on certain episodes, it was the one about letting go. I think it was, when it's time to move on. We actually had, I think, explicitly mentioned the fact that, hey, the right person at the wrong time is still the wrong person. And that
Mm,
is one thing that I think I have said that I'm not entirely sure
mm,
that I fully agree 100% of the time with.
right. And because like that's the thing, I think what defines the right person? I think that's
Right.
a good thing to talk about first,
I
because
agree.
like you could have on paper things that seem like the right person, but if that person, let's say you're at a like you're at the end of a rope, or like you're at like a crossroads where you want to go one direction, this person wants to go another, and they're like, listen, this this is it, and I'm not going to change my mind, and I'm moving this direction. They could be a great person, but does that even make them the right person? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah, I
um
do.
as compared to, well, what is the right person? Is it, hey, I still want to work with you and get to the point where we can, or like, I'd like to explore the idea of moving forward, but maybe it is still, timelines are different, or amount of emotional boundaries are different, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I feel like that maybe is a more accurate definition.
I agree. I think that's a better place to start because I think when we maybe something that like reflecting on my own statements I've made on this show and just throughout my life, I think I can be very prone to making black and white
Mm,
yes or no statements regarding relationships and dating. And I think a lot of that comes from my background in other areas of life that are completely unrelated to love. And
mm,
love, and not even love, but even just the idea of a relationship with anybody. People are complicated beings and have many
hmm
times it's not so simple as just, hey, I like you. Let's go on a date. Let's go on another date, another date, another date, another date. Eventually, we're going to get married, and that's it. It's
hmm
rarely, if ever, that straightforward.
Yeah, and I think to kind of let's begin to paint the picture around like this other area of life that you're talking about. Like you're saying in other areas, very black and white. I mean, I'm not sure if there's a connection with what I'm about to say, but I know you're a competitor at heart. You're someone who literally, I mean, you're a runner. You're someone that goes to win the race, and so it's either if you're not first, you're last. And
Right.
it's like a second place. Yeah, second place is second place, but it's not the gold medal,
No.
and so I think, like, how do you think that maybe some of that mindset has informed other areas of your life? Because I'm not saying that's what you're thinking, but just
No, it
from
is.
my perspective. Okay,
I
yeah.
mean, it's definitely a big, big thing and a big factor. I think it's been a really positive force for good in my life. I think in terms of my work ethic, in terms of how I approach my job, how I approach, problems that arise in my life. But I
hmm
do think it's a major negative when it comes to the idea of dating. And I think I've struggled with that. I think,
hmm
if I'm a person where the work I put in, I expect to see a result from
mm
that work. And
Yeah.
it really has detriments to my faith life as well. Like there's a whole rabbit hole we could go down, but specifically focusing on your question, I think I get into a mentality of all I need to do in order to reach the objective, which is to win the race,
hmm
is to prepare at an extremely high level and to go out with the mindset of I am going to win. I'm going to win this. I'm going to win this race.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the frustration and the deep-seated feelings of failure are there. And I feel like I've gotten better in that regard. Like it's no longer a chokehold on my life, but in the past I've been burned by this idea of I'll get really emotionally invested into something very, very quickly.
hmm
I will plan out these elaborate dates. I will try to curate each aspect of the experience to the absolute highest level I can, similar to
hmm
almost training. If you want to win a race, you got to be training at the level that you know it will take in order to defeat your opponents,
Yeah.
which who are
I
also
mean,
preparing.
and that's the big thing, it's like and preparing for a half marathon is a lot different than preparing for a 100-mile race in the mountains of Colorado. Shout out Leadville. um I mean, it's too complete. Like, you will be running half marathons in your just the preparation for that larger race versus even years ago. I mean, maybe the stakes were lower, you didn't do that kind of distance, and so I do think in some way it's like as we get longer and longer in our, I'm just gonna call, I even hate saying this, our dating career, which is just,
Yeah,
oh, horrible.
it
Shouldn't even
is.
like, but it's like the longer you get in that and the longer you're doing those reps, I think the more hardened you can get, and the more okay, the target can almost seem further off. I don't
It
know if I'm
can.
making any sense when I'm saying this, but it's like the longer you're in it, it's almost like you lose sight of like, okay, maybe the right person is worth waiting for in certain areas, because here we are thinking, man, we got to know what we want. The more we go
Exactly.
through it, the more we're like, okay, this didn't work, this did work, and but it's like everyone's different. No one quote training regimen works the same for
No.
everyone.
And
And
people are not the same. That's the thing. That
exactly.
is the
Yeah.
difference between a relationship and anything else in life. If
Mhm.
I want to get a job or if I wanted to save up money to go on a vacation, there's like a pretty set playbook or
Mhm.
plan that I could follow in order to do that. Now I'm not saying like there's still variables, I get that. But like when you're dealing with a person, this is a human being. They have their
Mhm.
own story, completely unique. They have their own emotions. They have their own experiences that have made them who they are. And so,
Mhm.
this idea that you could boil down dating or a relationship to a playbook or a formula really doesn't hold a lot of weight. And I will say this, the thing that I've seen that I really, really dislike, and I've even said it on this show before, but it's worth reiterating
Mhm.
the idea of, like, as an example, if he wanted to, he would.
Mhm.
That statement that you see thrown around a lot. It's like, oh, well, or if they wanted a relationship, they would just make it happen.
Right.
I understand the sentiment behind that, as in, I don't advocate an approach where you waffle between, like, maybe, like, maybe not. But what I do think is true is, like, you have to be able to look at your own situation with the nuance and through a lens that pays respect to what another person is living through.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're probably never going to stand a chance of having a relationship, to be honest, which is maybe one reason why I've struggled.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Because it's like at the end of the day, you have two people like and we say I feel like we've said this thousands of times, but it's like you have two people that are both fundamentally different people. You're never going to have a situation where like you are perfectly in alignment with another person. That is how we're created. We're created to be different. We're created to complement. We're created to contrast each other. And so in that, in all of that, it's like, okay, how can we even expect um that kind of playbook idea to work? Because it's like we can't be so rigid to any like okay just because this one person like okay I'm gonna lay out something right here.
Sure, do it.
You have two people, one person, let's say honestly close to identical in every single area as far as like romantic partners. So it's like you have you and then there's two like random people in a scenario. One person will tell you one thing circumstantially. Let's just say, like, I'm trying to think of an example of like how to make this like real. So like, let's say let's say someone really likes you.
Mhm.
Let's say they're going through a really hard time, like their family, like they're having family issues, they're having relational stuff back at home. Let's just say maybe their job is having problems and they're all over the place, but they really do like you. Is it fair to say that that person's in the same spot as another person who like yeah they like you and like it's really cool and they're a great person to be around, but you know they have eyes for someone else, but they'll tell you um that they want to be with you, but it's like
Right.
what is the background knowledge of their situation that's determining what they're saying and why they're saying it? I feel like it's like it almost sounds elementary when I say it
Sure.
though. You know,
Right.
like it almost sounds like it's like okay, like yeah, like 2 + 2 = 4. Like it's like okay, but it's so easy to be like this person doesn't want me at this very moment right now, and
It's
so
over.
it's over.
I'm
Yeah,
never
and then
talking to them
and then in
again.
your head you're like, I'm just gonna completely. This is like blowing up. I need to tell them how I feel because they've wronged me by not wanting it the same way that I want it, and then you ruin the chances of it happening because you know you go in full self-destruct mode.
Yeah.
But it's like
This
those two people are completely separate situations.
Mhm.
And so, Ben, how do you like? I'm curious with what you've been learning lately, or what maybe some of your takeaways. How have you been navigating scenarios like that, because I think maybe recently you've had some similar events like this going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would like to be able to sit here and act like I've handled each situation very well.
Hmm.
But the reality is, if I think over the past couple years of my life, I've had wildly different responses to the very scenario you laid out. For example, I I will use a personal example from some time ago. There was somebody that I met while on vacation, okay? And it was the type thing where felt like there was a connection. So, okay, that's one part. Had a good time and went on a date. And at the end of the day, I feel that if I took a step back from that situation and was able to look at it from the perspective of, I'm not saying that that couldn't have worked in any circumstance, but like if I was taking an honest look at it, it would have been probably a 1 in 1,000 chance that that interaction would have led to something sustainable.
Hmm.
And yet, but that's not how I responded to it. I responded by, I'm gonna just go for it and just
And
kind of
if it
go
hurts
all
me,
in.
it
And if it
hurts
hurts me, it
me.
hurts
Yeah,
me. And
right.
that maybe that's just who I am. Like I'm the type, like, look, if I'm down 100 to 1 and I'm the last guy on the battlefield with the gun in my hands, I'm going out guns blazing. I'm not going out any other way. There's only one way I know how to go. But that doesn't necessarily lend itself to success. I'll say that. So that's one example of something that I did. Did I massively self-destruct in that case? No, it wasn't horrible, but I think that it was obvious to me that, it was more of a convenience thing than it was oh wow, like I really, really care about you, but I just can't make it work right now. Now, there's been other times where the timing has been off for a variety of different reasons. Some of them I've reacted very poorly and just been like, well, nope, I'm moving on and like I'm gonna put you
Yeah,
out. I don't tell them this, but I'm like mentally, like I just cut them off and I'm like, yeah, I'm moving on. Like I'm not giving her the time of day anymore. Like
right.
whatever, I'm out. And then I regret it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm learning to be much more I think it's a case by case thing. Like I don't think you can look at it in like I don't think you can look at every situation and say the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like given all of that, you often hear the sentiment of like put yourself first, only watch your own back, and like do what's best for you. And I the more I've like established my own relationship in Christ, let's just start with that, and the more um I don't know, the more I've made it less about me and about other people, I think like that is the big pivot point, because
Right.
like we can talk about these scenarios and how we handled it, how we handled it well, how we didn't handle it well, that kind of stuff. But I think the number one thing it hinges off of is, are we doing it only for ourselves and how it feeds us, or are we really trying to serve the other person?
Right.
Because I think that is the big, like that's the big aha moment that I've had, is the less you make it about you. I mean, obviously, like we like don't just make yourself a slave to this other person and like
Right.
ruin yourself. But it's like the more you make it about seeking understanding the other person. Actually, I think the easier it is to determine, is this person the right one to be waiting for? Because
Right.
when you only make it about, oh, how do they make me feel, or how did this one date impact the butterflies in this way, and it's like, okay, let's
Mhm.
take a step back. We can evaluate the other person in a way of like, okay, how have I been able to serve them? How have or how has their character, like by just observing and watching and just, looking at it, how, like, I think you get a better sense of that person when you make it less just about how you feel about all of it, right? Um,
100%. You've got to this I don't know how to phrase this without it sounding horrifically cheesy, but
let's hear it, man.
you
Let's get the
you need to
Disney
be
story.
you need to give yourself an opportunity to go on a journey with someone. You can't it's I would almost use the metaphor of you aren't going to McDonald's and ordering a combo meal where you're picking and choosing when you're going to get things. You want it now, you want this, you want that, you want that. Boom, boom,
Mhm.
boom. It's done. It's like,
This isn't the Taco Bell
no,
pick my own Lux Cravings
no,
box.
it's
You're
not.
not
As
getting that.
much as I love that, which I do
Yeah,
love a Taco Bell Lux Cravings box. We all know
we love
that.
it.
Or most people know that about me. But if you
Taco
didn't,
Bell,
there it
please
is.
sponsor us.
But it's like, if you go to dinner with a Michelin star chef in your house and he's
Mm,
cooking or he or she is cooking you a 5-course meal, you're not picking every part of what they're doing.
mm.
You're not like, "Oh, well I want chicken fingers now." It's like,
Yeah,
"No.
give me
Like
chicken
let
fingers
them
and
cook."
ranch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like let them cook. And in the end, sometimes the result is way better than what you could have had immediately, but you're sacrificing your own convenience at times in order to be a part of that process. Now,
yeah, yes.
I'm not saying it always goes well, but this is where you love is war in a way. You are making a love it. We've said on the show, love is a decision. It's not a feeling, it's a decision. In war, on the battlefield, in order to win, you can't just stand behind a wall holding your gun waiting for someone to come attack you. That is not how you win a
And
war.
and on top of that, sometimes the operation laid out by the general, the one that you have to execute on, it that can be the general game plan, but you can't be so strictly adhering to
No.
what the things change. You
Right.
never know. You never know how strategy on the field is going to change second by second, moment by moment. I really like the restaurant analogy that you're kind of giving with like let's say it is a 7-course meal. Let's say they have hors d'oeuvres they're bringing out. They have
Mhm.
different flights of different things that you try out. You get different flavors along the way. Um, I think this is that's a good segue to kind of talk about um timeline. I think that's a really big point in kind of what we're talking about with like this quote, wrong person, right time, wrong time, whatever. It's always the timeline. That's
Always.
always the point it hinges on. Because to me, like I think it can come in like you can look at it two ways as well. Like if we go back to this restaurant analogy, um let's say you want to make things official with this Michelin star chef. Let's just call it like you want to make him your personal chef that you'd hire for anything. You're at course 3. He hasn't even brought out 4, 5, 6, and 7. We don't even
No.
know. He could be bringing out garbage on a plate and you have no idea until you get to that point. But if you're trying to make that decision before that point, that that's fun. I think that's fundamentally broken. It's a whole experience. That's what they call these Michelin star restaurants. It's an
It's a
experience.
sensory
It's a
experience,
yeah. It is
complete immersion, right?
right.
That's what it is.
And so that's the big thing. If you want something at step 5, and maybe they're also at step 5, but they want to see things through to step 7 or 8. How do you work through that? How do you be like, okay, let's embark on this journey because you touched on it. Like it's a journey and an adventure that you embark on because who knows, you might get to the 8th course and be like, wow, this is I had no idea that this person had that flavor to them, but I'm so glad I experienced it in the timeline that I did to where it didn't um it didn't what's the word I'm thinking of here? It didn't like invalidate the process leading up to it, or
Exactly.
like it wasn't like or like if we would have rushed to do something in the way that I wanted this to be, we would have missed X, Y, and Z.
No, 100%. And you have to be okay with also taking a risk and knowing that there's a possibility of failure and still choosing to do it anyway. And I mean, I mean, the Michelin star analogy, the war analogy, it all hinges on the same fundamental concept, which is you don't necessarily know the outcome before you're a part of the process. And
Mm,
in the Christian community, this is an area where I feel we've really done a disservice to a lot of people because we say things, for example, like we hear people's testimonies. Oh, I knew I would marry this girl the day that I met her. Like God told me, or like, oh, the
man, God
minute that
didn't even
I
tell me what I was gonna eat for
no, I know.
breakfast.
I'm
Like, what
like
are we talking about?
the minute I laid eyes on that woman, I knew for beyond a shadow of a doubt that was it. Um, it's not
Hmm.
that way in 99% of cases, but the way we talk about it, it seems like it is. All I was saying is sometimes I think we do a disservice in terms of what we say to people and how we make them feel, almost as
Mm,
if it doesn't happen for you with someone right away, it must not be meant to be. Like, oh, it's too much. And now I will say I think there's differences. Like, for example, I think obviously, like if the other person's just not into you and they're just kind of dragging you and stringing you along,
uh,
which had that happen to me too, so I can speak on that. I think there's a lot of wisdom in walking away. I'm not
100%.
saying overstay your welcome in someone's life, but
Right.
at the same time, like if the door is open, even if that just means, hey, I need to get to know this person as a friend for a long time prior to
Hmm.
actually do it, like making a move or like trying to take them out. Are you like, yeah, like I have to be willing to do that, knowing that there's a chance maybe it never will work out for me, and that's okay. But I care enough about this person because of who they are
Hmm.
to be willing to take that risk.
Right. And I mean, I think another thing too is like, and has the quality of this person, like if we look at it objectively and be like, okay, this person is a high quality person, like truly, and they are interested in me, and these things are going on. This is worth the wait. Um,
100%.
because that's another thing I think we got to consider is like, man, we can be around someone that might be into you and they do like you, but are they even a high quality person to have that be worth the
Right.
pursuit? And I mean, and that's maybe a topic for another day, but it's worth considering because the longer I think the hard part when it comes to choosing to wait for the long haul or like being like, man, like this is something I just got to hunker down and just deal with the amount of uncertainty that's in it. You
Right.
know, it's like there's so much uncertainty. You never know when somebody could just switch or flip or do whatever. And are we willing? Are we willing to be like, man, I'm going to have trust in this process? Because when we want things in our timeline, then it's like, are we trusting in the process? You know, and
Or
I
are
would
we
argue
trusting in God? Like
exactly. Are we
that's
even
the
trusting in
thing.
Him?
Nothing good ever happens to me usually when I try to make things happen on my timeline. So why would I expect anything different in a relationship? Why would I expect, oh, well, I can do this. I have proven to myself time and time again, I cannot.
Yeah, 100%. And like with all that is like, are we willing to expose our hearts to the point of like, this is so uncomfortable because I am so completely out of control of where this other person is at, you know, and making the decision of like, I am going to stick it out and do this process with them despite having what I want and where I want things to be. Because honestly, I think that stems from an insecurity. I
It
think
does.
when we are talking to someone and like you get to a certain point, like I was talking about the fork in the road of like one person wants to go one direction or maybe they do want to go in the direction that you're going in, just down the road more.
Sure.
Are we willing to be like, I'm gonna die to myself and what I want here and expose the pride or the insecurity or the feeling of unworthiness of like, I only have this person for a set amount of time. You know, it's like I think it's easy. We've talked about this
Yep.
before, of this idea of like like, is this idea of relationships, like, I think we've gotten so backwards on it, you and I. Honestly,
So much.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
say this, like, because like I think the audience needs to know. It's like we've we've talked like off the record just about um like it almost feels like, you know, when we're talking to a girl, there's like a window, there's like a trial run, or there's like a how long can I keep them on the hook and attached until, you know,
Until the
until
house
like
of cards, like, just comes
it all
down on
tumbles
you.
apart.
And you feel like in how do you do that? You compensate by trying to be the funny guy, and, "Oh,
Right,
how can I be as entertaining as I can? Because if I am too boring, oh, you missed your like, it's done, it's over." Like, and
right.
we try all these things, but at the end of the day, when you strip all that away, I think my takeaway is, like, right now I think the Lord knows exactly what he's doing, and not only that, but, like, what about the pattern of my life has ever shown you that it would be anything other than a journey? Like,
Right.
what like, honestly, the Lord, I think, has revealed and exposed every insecurity that I've had related to relationships, because this is an area of my life that, relatively speaking, I think is one of the least developed in my like, in terms of just the way that I look at it, I think is very unhealthy at times. I
What I
think
love what I love is this is the Doctor Love podcast, and it's
it
like
is
I think for both you and I can be confident saying this is the area that we have the least confidence
the
in.
least by
And
far, and
and
worst
it's like,
experiences of my life. Like, honestly, not only it's like least confidence, worst experiences. Like, I just am not good. Like, my own power,
same.
I am not
Yeah,
good at this. I'm
same.
not.
I have made so many decisions along the way because like I feel bad. You've given a lot of examples of yourself. I want to share a little bit from me.
Please.
I I've made so many wrong decisions when it's come to handling these situations. Like there was a girl in the past that I knew she was the wrong one. I knew she like there was everything on the wall was written of like run away. And because I wanted to chase something that felt like this form of like satisfaction or like oh she made me feel good or whatever, like I held on to that so tightly. And even after like I knew it
Mm.
was a sinking ship, and after she eventually left, I mean inevitably she like it happened. I was I was the one that whole time thinking I'm not going to let myself feel, I'm not going to let myself get in too deep because I know this person's bad news. But then here I was like please come back, you know? And
Hmm.
I reached out. I'm going to be honest. I reached back out to this person probably 4 or 5 separate times over the course of a 3 year span. Like this is how in deep I was with this girl. And and so like it's easy to take that experience and apply that to anyone that you could talk to. Like we were talking
Right.
earlier, no person is the same, but it's easy when you experience something like that and you've gone through that kind of trauma. I'm just going to call it trauma.
Yeah.
Um you so badly want to attach that same idea onto any other person you could interact with without even realizing it,
Right.
because in a way that is a defense mechanism. In a way that is us preparing and guarding ourselves to being like this person has to be able to tear down my like the walls of insecurity or whatever that I have because this is going to happen again if I let myself feel. That's what we think, you know? And so I think we approach this topic so like cathartically because
It is.
we've we've handled this I've handled this so poorly in the past. I've handled just when I talk to new like any new girl in my life, you know, I've it's difficult for me to take away this gut reaction of they're not going to want me or there's going to be something that comes up that's going to
It sits in
expose
there.
me,
Right.
and or like if they really saw who I was, then they're gonna leave or something
Right.
like that. Some thought that's just so maybe
It's
there is
so
elements of truth,
right.
but it's so wrapped around in webs of lies. Like something that the enemy does really well is he will take a factual statement, he will take something that's truthful, but he'll twist it just enough. He'll put a little spin on it that'll completely make it a lie and completely consume us. And I don't want that for anyone
No.
listening. I don't want that for anyone who's going through that themselves right now. We Ben, you and I both, Ben, have had to deal with something like this, in different levels of, like, different levels of intensity. And so, yeah.
No, and I couldn't agree more with what you said. I think to kind of put a bow on this whole thing, I would say to anybody listening who can relate at all to any part of what we're saying, we have lived long enough to be able to look at the world and see the quantity or the lack thereof of really high quality individuals. In this case, like women of God who we can really connect with. In your lifetime, you may only meet a handful. So when you do meet somebody like that, you need to ask yourself this question: am I willing, would I wait for this woman? Would I do it? And if the answer is yes, you need to commit your, like, you can't go half heart. You can't
Hmm.
just be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I will." And then but maybe not. No. If you're on the battlefield, it's survival. It is not, "Oh, let me just kind of run around and, see what happens."
Hmm.
No. If you're in this fight, commit to it with your whole heart and trust God with the outcome. That's all you can do. And maybe you'll lose and maybe it'll all fall apart, but at least you will be able to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you were honest with yourself and with the other person and you put your heart out on the line. And that's
And
what we're about here is
yeah,
authenticity. Be authentic. Show it's okay. Like it's okay.
it's okay to let yourself feel something
Yes.
too. Like, I think it's so easy to put so many of these walls up. And if you are going to decide, and honestly, I don't know if I can fully put my seal of approval on, like, hey, no matter what, going for the long haul. We've argued against that on
We
this
have.
show. But if you find yourself in a scenario where this person is worth going the distance with, even if it isn't how I exactly see it right now, I mean, you gotta hunker down. It's like there's a storm, there's a hurricane, there's two hurricanes in a 2 week span flying over you. What do? You pivot, you move, you hunker down, you figure out something to brave the storm and to get through it.
You
Because
do.
ultimately, life is gonna keep moving forward. You're gonna have to keep making hard decisions, and we can't just run away from every problem in front of us. You can't
No.
just do that.
Can't run away. I've done it for years of my life, and eventually that was
Well, it'll
something that the
catch up to
Lord,
you,
it
man.
will. It will when you're like 10 years from now. And like I've had to come to the reality if I kept doing what I was doing in terms of running away and self-sabotaging myself every time I felt myself getting vaguely close to someone, I
Hmm.
was going to wake up 40 years down the road alone in my house, having never experienced any kind of real connection with anyone.
Right.
And I had to ask myself, do I want that? Is that a life that I want to live? And I think the answer to that question is no. In the end, it's not.
Hmm. Yeah, and I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think, honestly, that's probably a good point to maybe wrap it from
It
here.
is. So thank you
Um,
for listening to our
yeah.
musings from the heart. This is a very raw, very unscripted episode.
Hmm.
But we hope it reaches somebody out there who maybe is going through the same thing or knows somebody who is going through the same thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching and supporting the social media and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I guess if I had a last piece of advice to share, it's like, at the end of the day, none of us really have this figured out,
No.
and that can be okay. And it's okay to be in a situation where it's not, we don't live in a black and white world a lot of times.
No.
And so it's okay when you're in the gray area to navigate the storm through that. Cuz like if it were just black and white and we had we just were arrived, we were just at the end point, then we'd all just be in heaven with God anyways.
Right.
We'd all be there with just enjoying ourselves. But the Lord puts us through these difficult things, these hard experiences for a reason, and it's to grow. Well, it's to grow our trust and love
It
towards
is.
Him first and
It
foremost.
is.
And so keep heart, everyone. It's
Yeah.
it's tough. It's
Hang
tough
in
out
there.
here, but it's tough out here. But we know that we have a good shepherd who's always watching over us. So
Amen. Hey, thank you guys. See you next time.
yep. See you guys.